Hey everybody, today I'm here to talk to you about Bidalgo. Bidalgo is a company that has a user acquisition and marketing platform that is used to optimize user acquisition campaigns and especially around the use of creatives. So I had an opportunity to speak with Bidalgo earlier this year during GDC to talk to them about the tools that they have, how to use the tools, and their applications. So for those of you who are kind of new to user acquisition topics, just a note that we did start a new series called UA Coffee Talk. And so if you're interested in these type of topics, and especially around the use of creatives, and creatives are clearly becoming the #1 driver of performance from a user acquisition perspective, I will put a link up above to the set of videos, and I highly recommend you check out the ones where we talk about creatives. But without further ado, this conversation we have during GDC with Bidalgo starting right now.
Bidalgo is a multi-channel user acquisition platform powered by AI, and we also offer services including creative production, media buying, basically a white glove agency service offering with technology at the core. A common pain point today, especially with creative being one of the major levers that affect performance, is the how and the why specific creatives are winning and some others aren't. So when we think about some of the things Bidalgo solves for, it's aligning creative resources with UA teams, and in many cases they speak different languages. So we've brought a lot of technology and AI to help being able to understand the different elements of the creative that's moving the needle.
So can you just kind of simplify for some of the folks in our audience who may not have as good of an understanding? So if I am trying to do user acquisition, meaning trying to acquire customers or players for my game or my app, I would use the Bidalgo platform that has a number of capabilities and tools to help me simplify that process. And so if I'm trying to buy users on the Facebook platform or Google or on rewarded video, Bidalgo would be something I can use to make that process easier.
Yes.
And then you mentioned creatives, and so creatives meaning like the ads and what the ads look like. And so for that kind of stuff, could you kind of, when you mentioned multi-channel, it means across like Facebook, Google, etc. But could you go into more of that in terms of what specifically the types of services do or the tools do to make that sort of user acquisition buying process easier for UA managers?
Absolutely. So you touched on a lot of things, and if we go back a few years, Facebook really was the only game in town if a marketer was trying to drive app downloads, and things have gotten much more complex. And so we talk about the different channels. Today marketers are having success with Facebook, Instagram, Google's UAC, Apple's search, Snap, and in some cases Pinterest. And so each of these native platforms have their own nuance. In many cases, some of the efficiency gains Bidalgo provides is allowing them to operate in a single dashboard and do bulk editing, uploads, a lot of labor-intensive things for starters. And then when we start to talk about campaign AI later in the conversation, now we're in a world where a media buyer can actually give a portion of its budget to the machine that doesn't sleep, that would do whatever they would do if they didn't need to eat or have any kind of life, and had a mind like a steel trap and could remember a winning creative from 2 months ago, and maybe it needs to be tried with a different audience or interest group. So it's a man or woman plus machine creates this whole being greater than the sum of the parts with efficiency gains over the native platforms. Is I think a good way to frame it.
Just to simplify, so I'm using this tool, I'm trying to buy on multiple channels, so your tool takes care of that, and there's like this level of automation, a lot of stuff like uploading creatives or things like that your tool just sort of handles.
Exactly.
Okay, great. And is there like parts of that you can show us today?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we think about, and I'll go into the actual UI as well.
Okay.
But when we think about if someone was constructing the ideal media team for mobile app initiatives, they're the roles that are from the media buyer to the manager to the data scientist to the BI expert. And today some of the challenges are that maybe it's a lean team that doesn't quite have a data science or a BI person to help them visualize all of the insights that they need to optimize their campaigns to drive performance. And so what Bidalgo has done is leveraging AI and machine learning. We're basically promoting the media buyer to more of a strategist. We're offloading a lot of, again, the repetitive, labor-intensive tasks so that the media buyer can then try new strategies, try new concepts. When it comes to the data scientist, in the background of Bidalgo's platform, every type of asset or anything that's going to impact the performance of the campaign is being ranked. So when you think about a specific creative, it's being scored against different audiences or targeting, and all of this is happening in the background. And the idea is that we're able to surface what a data scientist would be able to supply and enable a UA person to have for optimization. And then that basically dovetails into the role of the BI person. So it's things like our insights dashboard, our creative insights. So we've created this way to automate and fill gaps in the entire media team buying process and day to day.
Does the Bidalgo tool actually change the structure or nature of the team, or just like the type of work that, let's say, the media buyer is able to focus on?
Yeah, so it enhances it. I mean, if you think about, hundreds of different data inputs and things of that nature, maybe only a handful of that is something that's actionable for the UA manager.
Yeah.
And so it's surfacing things that it makes sense to take action on. And it's helping to cut through a lot of the noise. And when I think about, too, just human nature, and there's always so much more that can be done.
Yeah.
But in many cases, it's difficult to find these insights. It might take a lot of man hours to reveal things that Bidalgo surfaces much easier and faster.
So let's dig into that. So if you were to just succinctly capture what are the key advantages of using Bidalgo, like one of the things you mentioned is, managing a bunch of different channels at the same time. Two is automation, like saving people time. What are some of the other, you haven't talked so much about the creatives optimization stuff yet, that's coming, but would you say those are the three main values of using the Bidalgo platform, or what else is there?
Yeah, I think about just amplifying the resource of a UA manager, a media buyer. If the games or the app needs to scale, and it's not easy to just hire new UA people. So you start to think about if somebody was able to manage a budget of $1 million a month, and now they can manage 2x that. Well, all of a sudden, now you're, from a business perspective, reducing a cost of the most expensive thing next to maybe some of these media buys is the employees. And then when we start to think about data aggregation and visualizations, a lot of companies have spent a lot of time and money bringing on engineering teams and supporting members of the media team. And then you get to this point where the core competency of the company is now bleeding into supporting marketing.
Okay.
And it's very easy to kind of then start to build almost a business within a business. So we're trying to streamline and enable marketers that maybe think that they'd rather just focus on marketing without the company having to have its own mini ad tech company within. So that's, I think, the high level value. It's really addressing bandwidth constraints, helping people understand why and how specific creatives are winning.
Yeah.
And then really we're built for scale.
Right.
So when it comes to the efficiency flow gains, that's a big area of that Bidalgo helps with.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've been most impressed with in terms of the Bidalgo platform is the creatives optimization piece. I don't know if you want to jump to that now or if you want to do that later, but it'd be great to see more around how you guys do that, which is, again, from my perspective, extremely impressive.
It's definitely a unique differentiator, and on behalf of the Bidalgo engineering and product team, I will say thank you, even though I had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
So what we're looking at now, Joe, is a visual representation of what's happening under the hood, if you will, as far as the AI insights as it pertains to creative.
Yeah.
And so, as some of your audience may already know, when it comes to performance and campaign optimization, in Facebook, for example, we have things like creative, copy, lookalikes, and interests. These are the types of levers that the UA manager can pull to increase performance. And what the AI is doing is for each of these buckets, we can call them, it's scoring the specific asset or the copy or the lookalikes. And it's giving industry benchmarks of like verticals, maybe similar media media spend.
Yeah.
And it's giving us a score that's saying quantity in this example here of creative. This particular advertiser is doing a great job with quantity. This quality bar here, it's not necessarily saying the creative is not visually, aesthetically pleasing. It's saying that this ratio of quantity versus quality, that's an area of opportunity. In addition, we're helping marketers understand if maybe they're under-indexed in video, maybe over-indexed in image compared to their competitive landscape. It's highlighting top potential creatives. And a lot of this data is not just coming from the channel partners, but we're able to ingest data from the mobile measurement partners so that we know that the information is accurate.
And just so I fully understand, so if I have a quantity score of 89 and this quality score of 25%, so what would I do from, like, what like sort of actionable thing would I be thinking of doing from a quality perspective to address that 25%?
That is the $64,000 question.
Okay.
And that's the biggest struggle I think that teams have today is, hey, the creative team gave me this winning creative 3 months ago, and it started to fatigue. And for the audience, that means that when you show the same creative over and over again to similar audiences, eventually it just doesn't have the impact it used to. Humans like to have...
So the quality score is being driven by how well the creatives are performing in terms of whether it's, you know, IPM or CPM or conversion or whatever.
Yeah, so whatever the marketer's goals or KPIs, we call them, are, the system is factoring in, is this specific creative helping you reach your goals, or is it not necessarily moving the needle?
And just for the audience, what are some of the typical ways you would rate a creative? So would it be CPM, IPM, sort of install ratio, or like what do you typically see, like if you're trying to grade creatives?
If we're trying to grade creatives, it starts with the marketer's goal. So at the end of the day, it's dollars in versus dollars out. So we think about terms like ROAS, which means return on ad spend.
Yep.
Some marketers think of things like CPA, which is cost per action. So depending on the business model, or there's in-app advertising.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different ways that a creative needs to perform for a specific marketer. At the end of the day, like, it's hardwired into our system, customized for that particular advertiser.
Right.
What the system is actually rating on.
Right.
And then back to that challenge, if the advertiser feels like the quality is an issue, we have a unique offering in the market, and we call it our creative brief. And the real purpose of this is to help align, maybe I'll take a step back. In the world of user acquisition and performance marketing, you have creative folks, creative designers, and as you can imagine, they're thinking about the world in a different way than user acquisition managers who are maybe living in Excel and data tables.
Yeah.
And so the challenge has been, how do we merge those two worlds and create an actionable framework for them to be able to align on? And so what Bidalgo's introduced is a very unique creative brief that we're leveraging machine learnings, we're leveraging data from their mobile measurement partner, from the channel, and so we talked about, in this case, return on ad spend. So this KPI for this advertiser is very important. It means, what is my 7-day return on ad spend? And we're ranking the different creatives based on performance. And this is, actual performance. It's not, it's not trying to predict what could happen. It's what did happen over time. And so the system has a unique way of looking at the world. It's looking at not just return on ad spend, but it's also looking at what's my creative that in most cases is the winner. I'm trying it with different combinations of interest groups or audiences, and it's telling me that this is the one that has the most success overall. In addition to that, the system is using image recognition technology to actually dissect the different elements of the creative. So when we think about the challenge that the creative design team has today, they're trying to get lightning to strike in the same place twice in many occasions. And they produced a winning creative and they don't know why in the most case. So there's two different types of typical day-to-day operations if you think about a designer. They're either creating brand new concepts or they're making iterations. Iterations are typically more common. You could almost talk about like a 70% going with like what I know works, and then maybe 20 to 30% is like exploratory. I'm trying new concepts.
Right.
And so, we're all human. Sometimes we don't feel creatively inspired. And so what our system is doing is it's taking different elements, like in this case, mountain. We can hover over it. Most folks know what a mountain is, but if the designer wants to get a visual, oh, okay, mountain. So in the back of their mind, they can start to think, okay, if I'm going to start from scratch, things like mountain work, I'm curious what wind means. The system can also pick up things like, in this case, it looks like, okay, you win. So there's a combination of text, there's symbols, and then we're also highlighting things that we don't have enough data on, but the system is flagging this as interesting. So again, the designer's curious, okay, so if I started with a concept that was mountains and maybe you win and a spaceship, there's a good chance that I'm going to have a winning creative.
And so just to simplify it a bit, so one of the things that the Bidalgo platform does is like based on your goals, it tells you these creatives for your goals are performing the best. And then the next step of that is to like suggest if you want to create winning creatives or the ads in terms of what shows up creatively on those ads, you should add a mountain, you should have a you win symbol, you should do these things, and that's what's going to make the creatives or these ads perform the best, basically.
Exactly. Or it's going to be, instead of shooting from the hip, it's a more of an educated directional guidance on this has worked for you in the past, so it's more likely that this combination of these elements is going to be more likely to be successful than not.
Right, and underneath the hood, how all this comes together is, as you mentioned, AIs, that are the machine learning, artificial intelligence. You're like, this technology is tracking all this stuff and seeing how they relate together, and then kind of spitting out, okay, generating this creative brief. Your next creative should look like this, should include these things, and then and from my perspective, I don't know of any other platform on the market doing this. Are there any other folks working on this?
I haven't seen any other as well, and you think about the fact that we see these images on stage when Facebook is presenting, because they know that this is the biggest lever that UA managers and performance marketers can pull, and it's the most difficult to really pin down on how do we gain consistency. And I think the other piece that I mentioned about iterations are very common, and a lot of times too, when you think about just the ebb and flow of workload on the creative side, maybe somebody's out and there's bandwidth issues and there's not enough resources, and this winning creative here is starting to fatigue. Well, we're also highlighting the color palettes that are having the most success. So instead of coming up with a whole new concept, in this case, we have these other two winning color palettes. We can hover over and see the saturation, the hex code, and now a quick iteration on this creative that was starting to kind of die out is resurrected, and they get a bunch more mileage out of it and more performance. And then there's this scenario where maybe everyone was excited about a certain concept and it didn't perform as well as they thought. It could very well be that we're back to a quick color iteration change because it was maybe heavy on the underperforming color palettes. And while this was developed more so for Facebook, what we're hearing feedback on is that in many cases how the creative AI is surfacing these insights, the performance is similar across other channels, even ad networks. So a lot of times the learnings here from what we built out for Facebook and Snap can be replicated across other media channels.
Great. Cool. So definitely seems like a very powerful product. Are there any other things to talk about in terms of like, or that you are able to show, or
I think like, and probably getting into the realm of maybe not wanting to show too much about what's under the hood, but conceptually I can talk about our market's always changing. So a lot of folks out there know about AdWords, and then Google made a change to UAC. And what that did in the market was marketers used to have a lot more control over the performance of their campaigns. And so somebody that was an exceptional Google Ads manager or AdWords marketer, now all of a sudden they've had a lot of their tools taken away.
Yes.
And so if they used to be exceptional, at best maybe now they can be good or great. And the other benefit from the Google perspective, I would imagine, is that people that maybe weren't as advanced and weren't as savvy, if they were okay, now maybe they're good. And but we also, have heard from the industry we're in, we meet a lot of exceptional marketers that want that control back. So without showing it, I can explain that we've brought back a lot of the control that maybe UAC took away. And it's a lot of our partnership relationship with them and our team's innovation. But being able to see, where my allocation of media spend is going is important. And being able to say, well, if YouTube isn't performing that well for me, then maybe I should understand what change in my creative refresh I made that's having more YouTube ads served, or maybe it was a change in bid or budget, and now the marketer can steer UAC more in the direction that they want it to go. I think also when we think about the benefits of being able to operate all these channels from one place is a lot of bulk optimizations and bid changes and reducing the flow that occurs with like in UAC again, for example, marketer has to create a separate YouTube link, and there's a lot of extra steps. In our world, if the marketer's hosting their creative on the cloud, that's all they have to do. And everything's uploaded to Bidalgo, it's ready on demand, there's not multiple steps. So again, back to how we're built for scale, all these steps that are required over and over and over again, when we start to think about that, amortize out over time, it starts to be like, wow, maybe we didn't need to hire a couple more people, or maybe this marketer doesn't have to work 16 hours a day when there's a big launch happening. So we're making an impact on business overhead, on quality of life of marketers, and performance. Because again, if you know your tasks are going to take hours and we can reduce it to minutes, then you're more likely to look for hidden nuggets of ROI that previously you were just doing a lot of labor-intensive repetitive tasks.
Got it. Okay, so and for me, the last question I have is around, so what's next? So you guys have done a lot in terms of, automation, seeing things at, a high level and seeing everything kind of in one view, and then the creatives optimization piece, which is great. Is there anything else that you guys are going to try to address with the platform moving forward, or how do you think the space kind of changes in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. It reminds me that I'm underselling probably one of the biggest benefits of Bidalgo. So when we say AI, and I showed earlier that we're infusing AI across different aspects of the media team, I think a lot of times people, maybe the term is used so frequently. So when we say we have campaign AI, if we don't have this context that we've had today, somebody might say, well, wait, doesn't Facebook have, auto bidding and optimizers? And the answer is yes. But for us, that's like comparing cruise control to an autonomous car. So the idea of what our campaign AI is doing, and I'm leading up to the future here, just so you know, is that the AI has been watching every action this marketer's been taking. It's been, taking notes if it could. And at any point in time, the manager of the media can say, hey AI, I want to give you 20, 30, 40, maybe 50% of my budget because I need to go focus on a new game launch or something new. And now the AI is doing exactly what this person would have done, and it's pausing poor performing ad sets, it's launching new ones, and so it's beyond
automatically creating the targeting and the campaigns across all of the channels.
Yes.
And then is it also able to allocate budget between the different channels?
That's the future.
Those are all the questions I have. I'm here with KJ from Bidalgo. If you are buying traffic or buying users for your gamer application, I highly recommend you check it out. Thank you very much for your time, KJ.
Appreciate it.